Okay, hello again. Welcome to part four. So on this part of the presentation, we're talking about riparian habitat, why it's important, and life stakes, why we're using life stakes, and we're going to talk a little bit about erosion quickly. Okay, so what is riparian habitat? So riparian habitat or riparian zone, riparian area is the interface between the land and a river or a stream. So this area is known by various terms, riparian woodlands and forest corridors, things like this. And these are important areas because they help to stabilize soil and they protect the aquatic habitats from sedimentation and runoff. And they can even help to reduce a little bit of the pollution. So it's nice to have buffers and riparian zones that are naturalized. Some of them are even engineered um, through ecological restoration and uh, bioremediation to help to mitigate some of the negative impacts of human activity. So riparian habitat is important, and depending on the composition of the soils and the species that occur there, you can determine exactly how where the riparian habitat starts and ends, or there's sort of like a transition where you start to leave the riparian zone and you get more into other types of habitats. Um, so just as a quick demonstration, this is the Mackenzie Creek located in Six Nations. This is a highly naturalized stretch of the creek. And so on the left here, we have some erosion happening. You can see the bank is much steeper, where the energy or the force of the water is faster during floods. And so you have more of a scoring effect or an erosion effect happening here. And the soils or sediments are being washed away over time. And on the other bank, on the right here, um, is where you have accretion. So accretion is sort of the opposite, where you have this slower moving water, and you have the accumulation of sediments here. So this is a natural process. Erosion and accretion are natural processes that happen. However, when humans get involved in deforestation and other human activity affects the ecosystem, then we have it happening in a way that's non-beneficial to the ecosystem. And then we look at ways of mitigating it. So these are sort of, oops, sorry, these are sort of the riparian zones. So the steep bank and up into the forested area here has a sort of its own composition of plants and soils. And over here on the right, it has another sort of riparian area where you have this new deposits of sediment, which are being colonized by grasses and fast-growing shrubs. And then you have further back, you go from there, you get more into a forest. Um, and so these are the riparian zones, and just to give a demonstration or a visual example of what that looks like. So why willow stakes? So it's not only willows, we also have dogwoods that we can use, and buttonbush and elderberry. These are species we can use that are types of woody shrubs. So they are sort of like small trees. They're smaller than trees, and they grow with wood-like stems. And these species in particular, we can harvest the branches, harvest the stems, and we actually go and stick those right into um, habitat suitable for these species where there's a lot of moisture. So like shorelines and wetlands and swamps and edges, where edges of rivers and streams where we want to stabilize soil and we want to provide a better quality habitat. Um, so these are just some images of what that sort of looks like or might look like. And so we have some woolly-headed willow here and on this. So you're cutting the branches in the the lower part of the branch that comes from the base of the stem is where you have your pointed end, and then you have a more cut off, flattened end at the top. And so that's what you drive into the sediment or the soil where you want this plant to grow. And yeah, so willows, we have around 21 species throughout Ontario, and we have quite a few here in Six Nations. Some are introduced, some are native. We try to only use native species when we're looking at ecological restoration. So Um, the reason why we're doing this, another reason is with our traditional ecological knowledge or indigenous traditional knowledge, ITK and TEK, these terms that we talked about previously. We know that in Mohawk, Onse is a willow shrub or a willow tree, and Kahiwak Daje, um, sort of that Daje on the end of the on the end of the word. This is a continuous suffix, and that's telling us that it's going along in a line or in a row, and it's continuous. And that's what is to helping to inform our restoration practice is the cultural usage of this term for the river. So we know that willows were historically present on the shorelines in the riparian zone. So these provide shade, they provide medicine. The shade that they provide can help to lower temperatures of the water, which increases dissolved oxygen, and that's beneficial to all of the organisms living in the ecosystem, generally for aquatic ecosystems in our part of the world. So erosion, why is erosion important? Deforestation and land clearing and draining and developments, adding hard surfaces like roofs and roads and concrete, they can exacerbate the natural process of erosion, and it can become a problem for flooding. It can result in degradation of habitat for certain species. So historical deforestation in the Grand River has resulted in the decline of many species and change in land uses and things like that. So by 1930, most of the tree cover was down to about 5% of the original tree cover. And currently we've replaced just over 20% of that tree cover. And so for a healthy stream, I think it's somewhere around over 35% is a goal that you would want to have a healthy aquatic ecosystem or aquatic watershed, healthy watershed. So we have this legacy sediment in the Grand River. So this image here shows us legacy sediment is been happening for the past couple of 100 years. It's caused by erosion and deforestation. All these sediments that build up during floods. So in the 1800s, we had massive flooding due to the deforestation. And so we have this 200-year deposit of about just over 40 inches. It's close to 2 meters, actually, so about 9 feet of overburden that's been deposited in the past 200 years. Now, previously to that, for the previous 5,000 years, this is about 5 inches of deposition for 5,000 years. So that's a massive difference. Human caused erosion deposits sort of this natural disaster scenario of up to 9 feet of overburden or deposition, whereas the previous 5,000 years was pretty stable and didn't add as much of that over that period of time, like a lot less, and it's visible and it's measurable. So yeah, that covers off erosion and this term that we have here, legacy sediment. That's what we're trying to mitigate and help for the future is for us to be aware and cognizant of erosion and our impact on the landscape. So that covers off those 3 topics. And there's one more video after this that finishes it off. So, Nyawa for tuning in.